Hey, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Racking Up Rentals. This is episode number 208. So that means show notes can be found at thoughtfulre.com/E208. If you could take just a second to make sure that you are subscribed to this show, plus followed whatever looks like in your podcast platform app or YouTube or whatever you are doing, just to make sure that you don't miss anything coming up, also sends a message back to those platforms that you're listening, and that makes them want to share the show with everybody else too. So thank you so much for doing that. Honored with today's episode. And I got today's episode idea from pondering something recently that I thought was kind of ironic. So I wanted to share the irony with you first. And the irony is, of course, that most people, I think it's fair to say, got into real estate investing for a pursuit of financial independence, for a pursuit of financial freedom. And so what does independence really mean? I mean, I think independence means resilience. It means you are not dependent, obviously, on outside forces, the things that you don't have as much control over. You're not dependent on those to be able to cover your costs and live the life that you want. You're not dependent on, I think most people would focus on, you're not being dependent on a job. You're not being dependent on an employer to give you a paycheck each month, each week to live off of. So you are independent of things that are outside your control. And as a result, you have this downstream ability to dictate how your time is spent and whatnot. But it comes from this bit of resilience where you are tough enough to survive things that are not as much inside your control. So we get excited about having financial independence because we want to spend our time differently, et cetera. We want to spend it how we want to with our families, volunteering, doing passion projects, making art, whatever we want to do. And so we turn to real estate for good reason. That's what I've done. That's what you've done. That's what you're doing. That's a great plan. But what's kind of ironic is that then the way that we actually go about doing real estate investing is dependent on other things, on other parties, on outside entities like banks to approve loans, appraisers to justify value so that the bank will approve loans, even going upstream of that, brokers to find us opportunities, wholesalers to find us opportunities. And so there's all these kind of dependencies. And I just started thinking about, gosh, isn't it ironic that we're pursuing financial independence through real estate, yet our real estate strategy is so dependent as well? And I don't think about it like that. I don't approach it like that myself. And I'd say a major theme in all the people that I get to work with is trying to make them independent of those things, because independence is not needing to rely on anyone. Now, this isn't to say that you're going to be a lone wolf and never talk to anybody, never collaborate with anybody, never get the help of an inspector or a contractor. It's not to say that there's no collaboration. It's not to say that there's no synergy. It's not to say that there's no teamwork. There absolutely is and should totally be all of those things. But those things are voluntary relationships. I invite my inspector in because I want them to be there. I don't invite the appraiser in because I want them to be there. The appraiser has come into this situation because somebody else dictated that they had to be, just as a simple example. Of course, there are exceptions where I might voluntarily get an appraisal done, even if no one is requiring it. But hopefully you get the point. So you're not relying on anything other than your own skills and talents to get the job done. You are relying on yourself. There's a dependence. You are relying on your talents, your gifts, but it's not contingent. That's another great real estate word that applies here. Your ability to get done what you want to do is not contingent upon the approval of outside parties. If you can get a yes from the seller, that is what really matters. This speaks so much to why I place such a high value on entrepreneurship versus investing, right? It's not a coincidence. It's not a random choice of words that we call this thoughtful real estate entrepreneur rather than thoughtful real estate investor. Real estate entrepreneurs are focused on their resourcefulness. Investors are very focused on their resources. Entrepreneurs go out and they don't find opportunity, they create opportunity. And entrepreneurs are self-sufficient. Resilience is like being self-sufficient. So entrepreneurs go out and they say, I'm going to make things happen with my own talents and my own gifts without necessarily needing to be reliant on outside people. And that's what, honestly, as I look at my real estate portfolio or my career, the thing that I'm actually most proud of for myself is that for the last 20 years, this is my 20-year anniversary of being a full-time entrepreneur. That means that nobody else was signing a paycheck to me for 2 full decades now. And that the first part of that for me was a marketing and branding agency and consultancy that, ironically, in hindsight, we worked with banks and credit unions on. And then the second part of it here has been all about real estate entrepreneurship with a little overlap in between on those two things. But an expression that kind of comes up in real estate, or actually in entrepreneurship sometimes, is eat what you kill. And entrepreneurs eat what they kill, and they only eat if they kill something. Maybe that's a crude analogy or expression, so please forgive it. But if you want to make money, you have to go out and make it happen every time. And for me, that's what I'm most proud of, is actually that resilience and self-sufficiency over these last couple of decades. So all of this is building towards begging an important question. What is it then that allows a person seeking financial independence through real estate to not be dependent on other parties within their real estate endeavors? And that, my friends, brings me to what I decided to title this episode, the most important skill that a real estate investor can have. And the most important skill that a real estate investor can have, in my mind, in my philosophy, is the ability to sit with a seller and navigate towards an agreement between the two of you that you can buy without needing anybody else's permission or approval or anything else. So let's just sort of break that down. That would mean you would need to be able to find this opportunity without relying on anybody else. And if you know anything about my philosophy, we actually don't really find opportunities, we create opportunities. But you would need to initiate the ability to put yourself in that living room in the very first place. Put yourself in the living room with the right person in the first place. Who do we normally rely on for that type of a thing? Well, we normally rely on brokers or wholesalers to find, quote, opportunities for us. So now we're not reliant on other people to find opportunities for us. The second thing is we need to be able to negotiate to a yes without relying on other people, right? Who do real estate investors normally rely on to negotiate for them? Brokers, for the most part. Wholesalers to some degree. It's kind of a finding and negotiating kind of a idea, wholesaling. So we're not dependent on them to be able to navigate from hi, nice to meet you, all the way to yes, I say yes to your proposal. I will sell you my property in a particular manner at a particular price and terms. And then the third thing is, after we've found or created it, after we've negotiated to a yes, is actually getting it closed. This is where most sort of real estate investors doing things in a more conventional or normal kind of way, a more mainstream kind of way, they might get to the point where they get a signed purchase agreement from a seller through their agent or whatever, and they declare, I am buying a property. But what they're not actually saying out loud, and they might not even be recognizing it in their minds, but what they're not saying out loud, but is absolutely a parenthetical insert here, is I am buying this property, ... as long as the bank approves me for the loan, ... as long as the appraiser agrees with the valuation that is sort of in line with what we've agreed to for purchase price, because that contributes to whether the bank says yes to the loan, as long as ... my partner says yes to it, or as long as I can find the money in some other way. And so there's all of these kind of contingencies, not contingencies in the real estate sense exactly, but my ability to close it is dependent on somebody else. And that is what we want to eliminate. I want to see you eliminate it. Is it possible to 100% for the rest of time, every deal you do between now and 100 years from now, that you never are reliant on anybody else for anything? Maybe it's possible. I don't think that that's even important. I think what really matters is that you are increasingly not reliant on anybody else's yes, except from that seller, and you have control over whether you get to that yes or not. You can't decide for the seller. You can't say that every seller is going to say yes to you. But in those moments that it's only you and your skill set that you have to work with. And if you can use you and your skill set to get that yes from the right person, then at that point, you don't need any approval, permission, anything else from any outside person. And that is self-sufficiency, and that is resilience. And to me, resilience is my hope for you. Resilience is my hope for myself, right? And again, maybe nobody's ever 100% resilient, and that's okay. But if you can be a little bit more resilient next month than this month, a lot more resilient next year than this year, by decreasing our reliance on the need for outside parties to approve us, then we're going to have so much control, so much more control over our ability to go kill the things we want to eat. And that, to me, is what entrepreneurship is all about. That, to me, is the skill set that we need to develop, and what I believe is the most important skill set that any real estate investor can have. And it's what I want for you. It's what I want to help you create. It's what I always want to continue honing and mastering for myself. I don't think there's a finish line with this. I think this is something we're always improving and working on. That is it for today's episode of Racking Up Rentals. So again, show notes can be found at thoughtfulre.com/E208. Please do us a really big favor. Now that you've subscribed, we already talked about that. If you could take a second to rate and review this show, oh my gosh, it's so helpful. It's like a personal thank you to me. I see every single one of them. I'm so grateful for every single one. If you think we're doing a good job here, give us that 5-star review. It's super, super helpful. And it just lets us know you are listening. And doing a podcast can be a little bit lonely. You're kind of talking to the microphone and the camera directly yourself a lot, not always knowing who's listening. The rating and review is like sending a message back. And I'm so grateful when you do that. Did you know also that we have a Facebook group for us thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs? It's called Rental Portfolio Wealth Builders. You can just go to Facebook and look that up. Or if you want to take the shortcut, type group.thoughtfulre.com into your browser, and the magic of the internet will take you right there. So I will see you in the next episode. That's next Thursday. Thank you so much for joining me here again today. Until next time, this is Jeff from the Thoughtful Real Estate Entrepreneur signing off.